nominate and elect a secretary. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Senator Lane Taylor.
Senator Lane Taylor, you've heard the nominations. A second, thank you. Senator Taylor's not here, so it's an ideal time to go ahead and run this. Any opposed to the nomination? All those in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Senator Taylor will be our secretary in abstention. Moving on to the agenda, the first item, Senate Bill 2372. This comes from our friends at Mississippi Department of Archives and History. The way it was explained to me is, if you look on lines 34 to 37, the current language is that the monies that are collected on fees in the counties go to the counties for preservation of historic records in that county. The issue that's created is there's more money than there are historic records to preserve. So what the department has asked for is the ability to free up some of those monies to be used for records management, historic preservation, and museum services within the counties. That's a brief explanation of the bill. I believe we have someone here from the department. If anyone has any questions. Sorry, can't see that far. Was that an accurate explanation of the bill?
Filing fee of $1 per filing. Half of it goes to business municipality, half goes to treasury department.
Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Barry White. I'm the incoming director at the Department of Archives and History. That's right. The filing fee, half of it goes to the Treasury and it helps support, in the past, local government records management. As you said, we'd like to also expand that for programming for historic preservation as well as museum services. So essentially, we're not talking the type of money for capital expenditures. However, we can help with services, building assessments, recommendations and assessments with museum services as well.
Thank you, Mr. White. Does anyone have any questions about the bill? Senator Turnford? The question, Mr. White, was whether this will affect in any way the funds that the county.
No, ma'am. That half of that filing fee will remain with the county or municipality.
Thanks, Senator Turnford. Any other questions from the committee? All right. You've heard the explanation of the bill. Do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass is a motion. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. That bill will be reported out. The next item on the agenda is Senate Bill 2378. This is a bill that was introduced by Senator Wiggins. Essentially, right now, the Court Reporters Association, the court reporters are able to bill $2.40 per page for transcripts. That was put into place sometime back in 2004, I believe. This bill would increase the fee to $4 per page for the transcripts. This fee is not paid by, the only time this fee is paid by local money or by county money is in the case of indigent criminal defendants, when those cases get taken up on appeal. The majority of these fees are paid by litigants themselves in civil cases and other felony criminal cases where they're not running through the county indigent defendant office. If they were adjusted for inflation, this would be over $5 a page. This is just trying to get them on par with what they would be able to earn as a private court reporter, or closer to what they would be able to earn as a private court reporter. That's a brief explanation of the bill. I don't believe we have anyone here from the Court Reporters Association, but I'm happy to answer any questions based on the information I've been provided, if there are any. All right, seeing no questions.
I'll make the motion, title sufficient to pass.
Motion's title sufficient to pass. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. The next bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 2401. And we've got Chairman Sparks here to offer an explanation of that bill as it affects Accelerate Mississippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2401, primary purpose is to extend the repealer to 2029 for Accelerate Mississippi. Obviously, the Senate led the way in setting this up in prior sessions to be our workforce arm. We reconstituted the SWIB board. Accelerate Mississippi operates underneath the SWIB board and has to have approvals from them for financial transactions. They have to have two quotes, anything over $5,000, go through the traditional process. I believe it's anything over 50, but they have to have SWIB board approval for those things as well. So they have an additional step. I'm working on the strike through, but I believe these lines will be pretty close to correct. On line 460, you will see the first language which addresses the repealer to 2029. And then you will see that this provision, as it deals with the procurement board, they were exempted for rental agreements, leasing of real property, and you will see new language there, agreements for equipment, training, recruitment, and construction renovation. Those are a quick start or fast start if you have an economic development project, and we've all talked about the speed to market in the state of Mississippi and what we do on the end with MDA, what the legislature may do. But on the back end, there's often training agreements like with the Marshall County project and maybe even with the Amazon project, the AWS project, is that we put a sum of money aside to help with training. That is for recruitment of employees. That's one way, just let the battery run out. I mean, I didn't think I'd gotten that long-winded yet, but this allows them to actually serve the purpose of what they're set up to do, which is to help do these trainings and recruitments on the front end. So that language they felt like needed to be in there just to clarify the intended purpose of what their carve out was to begin with. On line 478, you'll see some technical changes, just WIOA changing from investment to Innovation Opportunity Act. These are the federal terms we're trying to be caught up with. And then finance and administration is utilized on line 480 in subparagraph D. This is actually at MDES. So technically, Accelerate Mississippi, they operate under MDES and then also have to go to the SWIB board for financial purchases. So they're kind of double governed already. Then you will see, again, a reference to the WIOA investment to innovation language on roughly 623. And then on 706 and 768, and again, I'm working through the strike through if I'm off by one or two. Accelerate Mississippi is to give an annual report every October 1st. We're moving that to November 1st simply because the information that they build their report off of usually doesn't get to them till September. And I would also add that they provide quarterly reports. Being chair of economic workforce development, I'm one of the people that receive those. So the October to November date is just to allow them to actually have time to do the annual report based on the fact that a lot of the agencies they rely on don't get that information to them to September. There is one addition to his or her. I think that's just a piece of cleanup technical language that when legal sees his, they add or her. We've tried to do that throughout the throughout the code, and then it's repetitive of the language that you saw on 460. You will see around 890 that same language. 867 on mine is going to 2029 on the repealer, and then the language we discussed earlier. That is a brief explanation of the bill, and I would be glad to yield any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Blunt?
Senator Sparks, you may have addressed this with a different line number, but can you tell me what sections are being repealed in section 4?
Yes, that is actually, no, I did not mention that. Thank you for saying that. These are some 1990 workforce areas and groups that are not functional anymore. This kind of goes along with Chairman McConn's removal of obsolete issues. And I will double check and get you the exact code section on each one of those. But that's the only thing that is intended is things that are obsolete would be repealed. We're just not going to extend them. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Do you have a motion?
Title sufficient, Dufo.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That bill will be reported out. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chairman Sparks. The next bill on your agenda is Senate Bill 2402, the Amy Act. And I've asked Chairman Boyd to offer us an explanation of the bill and what it does.
Okay, some of you may have heard me on social media announce that I would be sponsoring this bill. And kind of what precipitated this, we had a number of emails that were sent out and a number of senators with incorrect information declaring that she was Amy with a certain organization. The information was wrong. And so I immediately called the Secretary of State's office to try to find out who the organization was, because I was going to call them and say, you have wrong information. You sent this out to my constituency and it's wrong information, which anybody certainly has the right to do. Everyone has free speech, but this is wrong information. I want to know who it is. And they were not registered with the Secretary of State's office. I've since to come find out this has happened in a number of situations just over the last couple of weeks with entities saying that they are XYZ organization and they're not registered with the Secretary of State's office. They previously had a 5-day grace period of when they could do something like this. I have asked that we take that grace period away and that they have to register prior to initiating out becoming a lobbyist, and there shouldn't be really any difficulty with this, but lobbyists in here, when you take on a client, you need to immediately register. There's no 5-day grace period anymore is what this would do with this bill. This doesn't change the definition of lobbyist. I've had people call in and ask questions. This doesn't change the definition of this in any shape, form, or fashion. All this does is remove that 5-day grace period. So that's an explanation of the bill, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Turner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, so I looked at the definition of a lobbyist. What is a lobbyist?
If you look at if you have the code, Senator Turner Ford 583 L, it's a lobbyist means an individual who's employed and receives payment or contracts for economic consideration, including reimbursement for reasonable travel and limits expenses for the purpose of lobbying, represents a legislative or public official or public employee, or represents a person, organization, association, or other group for the purpose of lobbying, is a sole proprietor, owner, part owner, or shareholder in a business who has a pecuniary interest in legislative or executive action and engages in lobbying activities, or is any individual described above who's employed or has contracted with any agency, legislative or public official or public employee, or any public entity for consulting or similar services, but also engages in lobbying activities. So it is simply not an organization. It's simply not an individual who is representing themselves lobbying on something, but when you're a paid individual, and clearly this is a paid individual because this cost a lot of money to send the text out on a number of individuals that somebody is being paid in this process.
That was my question. Was it whoever is conducting this activity, it is for some sort of economic compensation?
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about an incident. So with these emails that went out, is it apparent text messages? Did the text messages say that the person was affiliated with an organization?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Amy.
I'm just going to be candid.
Yeah.
text messages went out on me also at another time, and a name was mentioned, but I have no idea who it was, and I imagine that it did cost or able to get the contact information that they had. I would assume that it was paid for, but is it the organization that is going to be subject to this condition or the person?
The organization would be subject to this condition and this. So, and Amy, or the organization who did it should have registered with the Secretary of State's office. So, and there's been a number of these texts went out through the years that, you know, they're with XYZ organization, and then that organization never registers with the Secretary of State's office. And by the way, I have worked with the Secretary of State's office on this legislation. And so what it does is it also prevents somebody from just sending out a text and then maybe registering 5 days later with that, because when they send out these texts like this, there's so much misinformation that is out there right now. This will help us make sure that we can track down where the misinformation is coming from. So, and like the misinformation that came like on this particular, you may have gotten this, you didn't get this one. Okay. The one that was on that, it was very important. It wasn't even the position of the people that the information was sent out on. So, we had to do a lot of public disclosure. And look, I believe in free speech. I want everybody to have it, but I also want full disclosure of where this information is coming from. And I think people deserve that.
And I agree. And so then my next question would be, this is not a situation where perhaps as long as the organization is registered with the Secretary of State's office, there would be no penalty under this provision.
Absolutely. We're not trying to penalize, or we're not trying to limit anybody's free speech. Only ask that they register so we know where the information's coming from.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We could share something in that dialogue you had with Senator Turner before. It made me think about people that post stuff anonymously on sites, and they advocate for a particular position on a random site. Would they need to register as a lobbyist? Or, you know, we all get anonymous posters and social media folks that you don't know who they are, and they post stuff, and they seem sometimes encourage others to vote a particular way. Would they need to register?
No, sir, because they're not a lobbyist under our lobbying definition that I just read. So they would have to be representing a client or financial interest.
Make them lobbyists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be a little free speech
Okay,
issues
yeah.
there. We don't
No,
want to
I
violate the
just,
First Amendment.
there was something in the dialogue that made me start thinking about those. It's not very dissimilar to what happened in the case that you're referencing. And should there be, when they start the process of trying to influence other legislators or other policymakers to decide something, should they then have to register?
If they're financially hired by somebody, that would be when but that's not in this bill. That would be where your lobbying definitions come into play there. This is, all we're doing on this is just changing at the point you have to register.
Well, I think some are financially hired by other people. That they keep it's not disclosed, but they are hired by people to
Then
do certain things. They would need to register as a lobbyist?
they would need to register as lobbyists, which
Okay.
this bill doesn't deal with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Generally, think of lobbyist, and I heard the definition and appreciate that. And I'm certainly not trying to kill this bill in any way. But I think a concern is when I think of lobbyists, like in this room, I think of them lobbying us, not lobbyists lobbying constituents. So,
Recess to get microphones.
I don't necessarily think about a lobbyist being hired to lobby constituents. And I know that's done, and I'm sure it's done, but I just somewhat worried this bill could be skewed as protectionism, sort of. But I think it's being candid, and I like the idea of what you're doing, and that is us knowing where the information is coming from, and I think that's a transparency issue.
It is a transparency issue, but let me say this, we're not looking, once again, I'll have y'all look at the context of the bill. All we're doing in this piece of legislation is we are putting in when, at the point in time they have to register. So we're taking away all we're doing in this piece of legislation is taking away the 5-day grace period on here and saying that you need to do this before you take on a client, before you go lobby for them. So the protectionism or any of those issues were way discussed when these lobbying laws were passed years ago. We've all kind of lived with and were settled with as that nature. This just says when the point in time when you have to lobby.
I understand.
And it's going to be before you send out mass text messages to the public that you're on a paid platform that you're doing that. You need to register before that.
Understand. And this doesn't broaden the scope of what a lobbyist is.
This does not, the scope of what a lobbyist is, it doesn't change it in any shape, form, or fashion. But if you are paid to advocate on behalf of somebody, clearly you are going to fit within the lobbyist definition.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? You've heard an explanation of the bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I need a motion.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Title sufficient to pass.
Heard the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. That'll be reported out. Last bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 2445. Again, one of Senator Boyd's bills, dealing with community mental health centers. Recognize Senator Boyd for an explanation of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I think the Department of Mental Health is here Director is here, and this is a piece of legislation that the Senate has seen now when we have passed out of our chambers 2 times already. This will be our 3rd year, and we have somebody from the department to really kind of go through what this bill is.
Sure.
So-
Absolutely. Please.
This is Wendy Bailey, Chair of the Department of Mental Health.
Ms. Bailey,
Hey,
welcome.
thank you.
If you would please just introduce yourself and provide some background on Senate Bill 2445 and what we're trying to do.
Okay, my name's Wendy Bailey. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Mental Health. As Senator Boyd said, this similar legislation passed in 2024 and in 2025 through the Senate. It failed on the House side, so it was being reintroduced this year. And it basically creates a formal performance audit of the community mental health centers to assess performance. So in this legislation, the Department of Mental Health would develop performance standards that would be used every 2 years in a formal audit. We would do so with input and feedback from the community mental health centers and utilize a national kind of consultant or expert that's done this in another state. And performance standards would be developed by DMH by June 30th, 2027. So we would have a year to set forth what those standards would be. And then DMH would begin conducting performance audits during FY28, and they would be conducted at least once every 2 years. So the audits would examine key outcomes about how the community mental health centers are delivering core services in the community, how they're managing public funds, and timely access to those services across the state. As you know, community mental health centers are part of local government. They have a board of commissioners, and those are appointed by local board of supervisors, and then they supervise and have oversight of the community mental health centers. Currently, the Department of Mental Health has operational standards that they have to meet, and then we provide them grant funds. About 80% of all of DMH grant funds go to the community mental health centers. So we have 2 ways, through our standards and through grant outcomes now. This would establish just a formal audit process to move that forward. If a community mental health center fails to meet the audit, if they fail to meet the performance standards, they would be placed on probation for 6 months. Failure to pass after probation could lead to the replacement of the CMHC executive director or other officers with contractors chosen by DMH until they're back receiving the performance. So to kind of put that in context, we want to make sure that everyone understands it's not a takeover. But what it is DMH does not want to directly manage the community mental health centers. This is if there's a failing community mental health center, then this is a way that the state can step in similar to with a school district, only until they come back into compliance. The bill also talks about there would be discussion with the consultant that's working for the Department of Mental Health during that time and the community mental health centers.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Any questions from the committee? Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I'll.
Yes. Third time's a charm.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you for, you've been very quick response when we've had constituent issues, and I appreciate you for that. As we look at this and engage in this legislation, do you have an idea of how many health centers might be on that borderline or failing now? Is there a problem?
So I would say there's a third that are very strong. There's a third that's kind of in that mid area, and there's a third that there's some issues that would need to be worked through. There's several that are struggling financially. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wendy, thanks for being here. And I know this has come through before, and I think you and I have talked a little bit about this, but currently if a CMHC is not meeting the operational standards, what do you do?
So right now, if a community mental health center is not meeting the operational standards, we can put them on probation. They have to meet our operational standards, but the process is decertification, which if you decertify a provider, they have to cease providing services. So that was one of the things when we were approached about this, of if there's a failing community mental health center, if you decertify them, all of the citizens that are receiving services through them are not going to receive services. And we don't want to see that happen. Again, we don't want to operate or manage a community mental health center, but we want them to be successful. This is if there's one failing, the state steps in temporarily.
In the past, when we've had that, I know we've consolidated a few, one in my area, where the group that was in my area took over a few other counties, CMHC. And I know that's happened. I think it was Region 8, if I'm not mistaken, up in the Delta too, and and the coast as well.
There's been several.
So they were consolidated in the past. Do you think consolidation would be a better way to go on this?
Personally, I don't. I think you can have a community mental health center region become too large. That one of the things is that the local connection is there. So instead of seeing more community mental health centers consolidate, I would rather us work towards saving the community mental health centers and helping them become more sustainable where they're at.
Well, they're currently represented by people that are appointed by their counties, correct?
Correct.
And so even if you have a larger group, they'd still have appointees from their counties that would have local interest and know
Absolutely.
the lay of the land, so to speak.
That's right. Each county appoints one commissioner, and that's the board that has the oversight for the community mental health center. That's right.
Unless, and I know we changed the boards in other places to have more than one and have a weighted board participation, but
Mhm.
let me ask another question that I know has so a little bit on this is your department would create the performance standards and then you would assess whether they're meeting the performance standards.
So yes, what our plan would be is we would work with feedback and input from the community mental health centers. I believe they should be involved in the development of it. So feedback and input from the community mental health centers, work with a consultant to help us create that. We don't want to sit in a bubble and us do it ourselves. But I'll be honest with you, we worked with the former court monitor, Dr. Michael Hogan, when this was first introduced 2 years ago, to kind of lay out a structure. And the way that we were looking at is it would really be 4 areas that the performance audit would be. 1 would be compliance with the operational standards. 2 would be fidelity reviews of core services. So the core services they are required through statute to provide, how are those operating? How are those the access to those services? 3 would be a fiscal audit. And then 4 would be key performance measures. So how many people are they serving? The number for diversion, the crisis stabilization unit numbers, things like that. That would be a key area that their input would be.
Well, if they gave you input, is there a guarantee that it's included in the report? How do we know? Is the legislature going to get a chance to look at this? It looks like it's not going into effect for another, year and a half or so, or at least the standards. So we'll have a chance to look at it and maybe get feedback from our local CMHCs as to whether or not the performance standards are appropriate for them. Correct?
Be perfectly fine with that. I mean, if this bill passes and it goes into effect, we could, before the next session begins, I mean, we would still have 6 to 7 months to be able to work on that, and we could provide y'all a draft of what this would look like and then get feedback as well. I would be
I
fine with
think, I think that would be good to have it out there for a lot of eyes to look at, because I
that.
think
Absolutely.
that's the concern that I would have, is if they get something essentially landlocked, and I don't think you would do that. When you be very clear, I've got trust and confidence in you to do the right thing, but something that they feel like was kind of landlocked down their throat, and you're going to be the same group that's going to assess whether they're doing it, you can understand why the CMHCs would be a little skeptical about the effectiveness of it, being told these are the standards you got to take, and we're going to determine if you meet those without any input.
I completely understand that, and I'm open to the feedback. Again, it goes back to the state needs the community mental health centers, and we want them to be sustainable and people to have access to services. So I am perfectly fine with getting that feedback and us even showing you that and how it can be incorporated into the performance audit, because ultimately what long term I hope this would do is issues that are revealed through a performance audit can also help you see what areas of the state there's gaps in services and there may need to be more funding or additional things looked at. It really should be a positive thing, not a punitive in my mind.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And I think we all agree that we just want good community and statewide mental health services for everybody. And so just make sure it's implemented right. So it does. You talked about fidelity earlier, and if it's not implemented correctly, then you're not going to have the fidelity that you need to have a good program. But thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Hobson. Any other, Senator Turner Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if after the rating scale, performance scale has been promulgated or established, and then this audit procedures in place, it says that the community mental health center should have 6 months to, I guess they will be reviewed for 6 months.
That's right. It would be a 6. So if the audit is the performance audit, they would go into a 6-month probationary status, and they would have 6 months to come back into compliance and improve their performance. At the end of that 6 months, we could grant an additional 6 months, or the determination could be made to bring in new leadership at the community mental health center, similar again to with the school district.
So my question is, because when you think about the rating scale for school districts, will you all make every effort to make sure that these standards that are implemented can actually be attained by the community mental health centers? That's a concern. And then secondly, it seems as though after the 6 months, I may have been reading too fast, that this oversight could last indefinitely. And then once they attain compliance, they would have 6 months to stand on their own. Am I
That,
interpreting that correctly?
that is right. I can tell you, and if we need to work on wording, we certainly can. I don't want it to be indefinitely. I say again, I don't believe the state should operate the community mental health centers. I don't. They're part of local government, and that's where it needs to stay. This would be a temporary thing to avoid another consolidation, to help that community mental health center sustain. When you talk about the other, yes, once they come back into compliance, they have to show that they maintain that continued compliance for 6 months. And then, I think that's probably what you're referencing, line 568.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. It'd be 6 months of sustained compliance. Because the contractor would only be temporary.
And so to what extent would the contractor be involved in the operations of the community mental health center if that path is followed?
They would be serving in that interim executive director role if that's what happens. That's right. They would.
Ability to hire, fire.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Turford. Any other questions from the committee? I just for clarification, these community health centers are funded by Department of Mental Health. Are those state funds or what is the source of funding, I guess?
That's a very good question. So, they are, again, local mental health authority, so their oversights local county government. They receive 90% of the state general funds that we give out in the form of grants. They receive 90% of the state general funds that we give out in grants. Overall, all grants, including federal grants too, it's 75% of the grant funds. They also receive county contributions based on millage. Total for all of the community mental health centers across the state, it's about $9 to $10 million county contributions that goes towards them. It's about $100 million in grant funds from the Department of Mental Health. They receive Medicaid reimbursement. They can bill insurance, but they have a significant amount of indigent indigent population, because they are supposed to serve regardless of an ability to pay, and many times they are serving the indigent population.
So dollar to dollar, if they're getting roughly 10 million of
County.
local contribution,
Mhm.
they're getting about across the state 100 million in grant money.
Mhm.
That 100 million is divided how between state and federal? I'm just trying to follow the statement.
It's about $60 million in 57 to $60 million in state general funds. And then the remaining about 30 to 40 is federal.
Okay, so it's a significant chunk of state money.
It's a significant chunk of state money. Yes. A lot of the services from the DOJ litigation, like PAC, DICORT, mobile crisis, all of those are funded through state dollars.
Understood.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other questions for me? Senator Turford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if it is determined that a community mental health center has not reached said status, they're non-compliant, will they have an opportunity to challenge the determination of the rating?
So that is not necessarily in this legislation. In our operational standards, though, if we go do a site visit and you are not in compliance, you submit a plan of correction, and there is an appeals process that they can go through as well. So that is in our operational standards. That's not spelled out in the legislation, but I would be fine in adding. I don't have a problem with that.
I think that would be prudent to add some sort of due process provision for the,
Similar to what our standards have.
so that they will know possibly ahead of time.
Senator
They'll be
Turford, would you
going
like to
into-
offer a conceptual amendment?
Oh, yes, it's clearly a concept, but Chairman Hobson may want to stand and help me.
If I may,
Hobson,
Madam,
sir.
sorry, Mr. Chair, to Senator Turner Ford's point, I see where she's going. I was thinking through this, who would, from a due process standard, if it's going to be going back to the same group that's saying you're not meeting the standards, is there really any due process there? Is there some other outside group, or is there some body within the Department of Mental Health that's separated?
Right now, it goes back to the state when they challenge this, it goes back to the State Board of Mental Health, the actual board, and they make the determination of it. That's what's in the
Okay.
processes right now.
So if Senator's trying to forward, yeah, so if the decision's made by Department of Mental Health Administration, the appeal then would be to the board, the full board of the Department of Mental Health. Is that satisfactory to you, Senator trying forward?
Like to think about it. I think that could be a workout. But I think certainly if this lady is given the center ought to have the opportunity to say, well, you're incorrect. We have this, and someone to review it.
And you could put in something similar to way our standards are now. So again, you would conduct the audit and then you would have to submit a plan of compliance. If you're not in receiving, the performance standards, so you would have to submit a plan of compliance. And then the plan of compliance can be accepted and you have an appeals process right now. You first appeal to me as the executive director, and then you can also appeal to the State Board of Mental Health after that. Yes,
This
that's
was-
the operational standards right
Okay.
now.
So right now, if this was implemented, that would be the SOP of how
Mhm.
that this would be implemented under your.
That's how
standard.
we would do it. Yes. Yes.
I don't want to hold up the legislation, and I understand that we're approaching a committee deadline. Do you intend to meet again before the deadline, Mr. Chair?
I do intend to meet on the deadline on Tuesday.
If the chair is willing to entertain a motion to, if recognized, I would move to lay the bill on the table subject to call of the chair.
In the interest of trying to continue to work with this and to give the department an opportunity to clarify that appeal process and what that would look like in relation to your current regulations, I would entertain an amendment to add a reverse repealer so we could get it out and work on it. And if we can't get, I will work with you between now and the floor deadline to, if we can't get the language right, I won't bring it back up.
Well, if recognized, I'll move to insert a reverse repealer.
You're recognized.
That is my motion, Mr. Chairman.
You've all heard the motion to add a reverse repealer so that we can continue working on this bill and the specific language. And we do appreciate the work that you do. And we want to try to get this right and keep this thing moving. You've all heard the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we're back on the bill with the reverse repealer. So you've heard the motion, title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor? Any opposed? That bill will be reported out. Thank you to the committee for your hard work on this. One of the things I've always enjoyed about this committee is working with the senators here. I appreciate your experience and your insight and your deliberations. As I pointed out, I do think that we will probably meet again on Tuesday. We'll just have to see what comes to us on the double referred bills and go from there. Do I have another motion?
That's a report.
All those in favor? All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. So there were some recommendations that they to